close to the mic.
Good evening. I'd like to introduce our first speaker, Myra Shulman from the Conservation Law Foundation.
Yes. Everybody, can you come to order, please, while the presentation is about to begin?
I apologize, everybody. I was chit-chatting in the back and missed my cue. My name is Mara Schulman. I'm an attorney with the Conservation Law Foundation. Can't hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Oops. 1 second. My name is Mara Schulman. I'm an attorney with the Conservation Law Foundation and their Zero Waste Project. Very nice to see you all here tonight. Thanks for coming out. I'm going to start by reviewing some slides I have on the proposal that Aries has made for building a biosolids gasification facility here in your city. And after I've finished talking about the proposal, we'll have a speaker talk in a lot of detail about PFAS. So if you have questions about PFAS as I'm speaking, don't worry, they'll all be answered by the next presenter. So what is Aries proposing here for your city? I'm gonna, if you could switch to the next slide, thank you. Oh, let me just back up and give you a little bit of information about the Conservation Law Foundation. We use law science in the market to create solutions that preserve our natural resources, build healthy communities, and sustain a vibrant community. And in the Zero Waste Project, we're particularly focused on reducing the amount of waste that our communities produce so that we can extend the life of our landfills and not build or site new ones, and certainly not build or site new incinerators or other facilities like the one that's being proposed here, so that we can benefit the environment and public health for all of us. Next slide, please. Thank you. So Aries is proposing to build a sewage sludge or biosolids treatment facility here in your city. And I want to just talk a little bit about sewage sludge. Sewage sludge and biosolids are interchangeable, but sometimes you'll find that industry uses language that greenwashes or makes something sound better than it is. And so what I want to be clear about is that when we hear the word biosolids, we're talking about the product that comes out of the wastewater treatment facility after it's been processed. Gasification, we'll talk a little bit more about that as well, but that is the process by which Aries is proposing to treat the sewage sludge. If we could go to the next slide, please. Thank you. So the facility would take in up to 500 tons of sewage sludge each day. That would produce 46 truck trips to and from the facility each day. The facility would generate 100,000 gallons of wastewater each day. It would send air emissions through a 127 plus foot high stack over your city and produce 25 tons of ash per day. This is all this data comes from Aries' own proposal. The ash would be the byproduct after the gasification process has been completed. And Aries is proposing that it would sell that ash for use in the production of cement, concrete, and soil amendment. As we'll talk about a little bit later, that makes us very nervous because the ash is going to contain any of the toxics that were present in the sewage sludge. Any dried sewage sludge that remains when the gasifier is not operating, Aries proposes to sell as fertilizer or soil remediation. Again, problematic because any toxics that are in the sewage sludge would then make their way back into our soil. So let's talk a little bit more about sewage sludge. Next slide, please. Sewage sludge is the solid or semi-solid leftovers from wastewater treatment facilities. It's already contaminated. Wastewater is contaminated already with some of the substances that make their way down our drains. There's a few listed here: steroids, hormones, pharmaceuticals, metals, flame retardants, microplastics, and PFAS. And what's made even worse is it's not just the toxics that go down our drains. Wastewater treatment facilities, many of them, also take in landfill leachate. Landfill leachate is the juice that leaks out of landfills. So any goods or consumer goods or other materials that make their way into landfills, when that juice seeps out of the landfills, it's collected. That leachate is collected in leachate collection systems. If it's transported to a wastewater treatment facility, then any of the toxics that were contained in the garbage are now mixed in with the wastewater that is being treated at a facility and ends up in our sewage sludge. Sewage sludge can be Class A or Class B depending on whether the treatment method removes pathogens. But what is very clear is that wastewater treatment facilities are not set up to remove things like PFAS. Aries is making a lot of bold claims in its proposal. Aries is claiming that the facility will destroy toxics like PFAS through a high temperature gasification process. It's claiming that the facility will not discharge toxics like PFAS into the air, soil, or water. It claims to have a special technology, something called a fluidized bed gasification, that can accomplish this. We're going to have a slide shortly that will directly from the proposal that depicts what that process looks like. On the next slide, we're going to talk a little bit about gasification. It is a very high heat, low oxygen processing of waste. It's similar to incineration. However, because it's low oxygen, it is different, and it's broken into two separate parts. The first part consists of the waste being heated in a very oxygen deprived environment to create a synthetic fuel. Ash is a byproduct. And as we discussed earlier, the ash is what Aries is proposing to be sold as an amendment for concrete. The synthetic fuel is then burned in an oxygen-rich environment, leaving ash as the byproduct. On the next slide, we have a picture from Aries' proposal of a fluidized bed gasification facility. It's very pretty. It claims to take in sewage sludge, do some magic, and produce a useful material from which all toxics and PFAS have been removed. But as we'll hear from our next speaker, the science does not support that this proposed technology works. Thank you.
Thank you, Mara. I would like to introduce Kyla Bennett from the Public Employees Environmental Responsibility Group. Thank you.
Hello, can everyone hear me through my mask? I'm Kyla Bennett. I work for PEER, Public Employees for Environmental Responsibility. I'm the chief scientist there. PEER is a national nonprofit. We're based outside of Washington, D.C. I am in Massachusetts, not too far from here. I work in the New England and North Atlantic, but I also am the scientist for the entire organization. We are a whistleblower group, so we support and defend local, state, and federal employees who work in the environmental arena. They work in conservation commissions, DEP, EPA, Fish and Wildlife Service, things like that. We have been working on PFAS since 2018, and I want to talk to you today about why I think that the Aries proposal is so dangerous for you. And just as an aside, the reason I'm wearing a mask, I am not sick. I am very high risk for COVID. I don't usually do in-person things. I'm high risk because I had a brain tumor a couple of years ago that I firmly believe was given to me from my PFAS contaminated water from our wells not too far from here. And because of my brain tumors, I am high risk. So anyway, what we're going to be talking about today is PFAS and gasification, why you should be concerned. Next slide, please. So what are PFAS? PFAS is an acronym for per and polyfluoroalkyl substances, and that's why we call it PFAS, because that's really a mouthful. There are thousands of these chemicals in this class. EPA thinks there are about 14,000 of them. We don't know for sure, and it really depends on how they're defined. EPA does not even have a consistent definition of PFAS, but we do know that it's a very, very large class of chemicals. The one thing that they all have in common is a carbon-fluorine backbone, if you will. And the carbon-fluorine bond is one of the strongest bonds known in organic chemistry, which is why PFAS have been given the nickname forever chemicals, because they simply do not naturally break down or degrade. All of them are persistent, as you can see up there. Many of them bioaccumulate, which means they build up in your body and they stay there for years and years and years. And all of those that we have tested are highly toxic. In fact, just this year, EPA announced that at least 2 of them are known to cause cancer. They are used as water and stain repellents and surfactants, and they are ubiquitous. Next slide, please. They were discovered by Chemours scientists in 1938. Literally, these scientists were in a lab and they were playing around with chemicals, and one of them spilled something on his shoe, and then water after that, and the water beat it up. And he immediately thought, wow, this could be handy. And indeed it was. Next slide, please. PFAS are found in so many of our day-to-day products. They're in our carpets. They're in stain proofing for carpets. They are in upholstered furniture, in food packaging, like the wrappers around hamburgers when you go to a fast food place, or microwave popcorn bags. They're in our makeup. They're in tents and backpacks and rain gear. They are in firefighting training, firefighting turnout gear, and their foam, which we're trying to get rid of. They are in baby car seats. They're virtually everywhere. And it's a problem. States are starting to regulate PFAS in the regulatory vacuum left by EPA. EPA has yet to regulate any of these chemicals, although this year they have proposed drinking water levels for 6 PFAS, and I'll get into that in a little bit. Next slide, please. So there are 3 routes of exposure for PFAS. You can ingest it through food and water. You can inhale it when it's in ashes, dust, or smoke, and you can dermally absorb it. So, for example, firefighters have PFAS in the gear that they wear when they're fighting fires. They have a higher rate of cancer than anyone else in the United States. In 2019, 75% of firefighter deaths were from cancer, not from running into a burning building. A lot of them are dying of cancer. Next slide, please. It's hard to see this slide, but it tells you all of the different health impacts that PFAS are associated with. Diabetes, poor immune response. In fact, it makes vaccines not work well. So if you have a high level of PFAS in your blood, your COVID vaccine won't work as well, or your flu shot won't work as well. It can cause developmental issues, kidney cancer, thyroid cancer, brain cancer, testicular cancer. That's one of the big ones that the firefighters are getting. It can cause preeclampsia in pregnant women. The list goes on and on and on. High cholesterol, very, very dangerous chemicals. Next slide, please. while they're working that out, I'll tell you that we can only test for about 70 PFAS chemicals out of the 14,000. And we have only done toxicity data we only have toxicity data on about 29 of them. And as I said, all of them are toxic. All of them cause some health problems. We don't know if they're all carcinogens, but many of them are. I'll just keep talking while they're working that out. Massachusetts regulates 6 PFAS in drinking water, soil, and groundwater. 2 of the what we call legacy PFAS are PFOA and PFOS. Oh, there we go. And those are the ones that we know the most about. If you haven't watched the movie Dark Waters, I highly suggest that you spend some time this weekend watching it. It's a docudrama about a true case in West Virginia that really brought national attention to the issue of PFAS. So how toxic are PFAS? Currently, the states that regulate PFAS regulate them in parts per trillion. And that's a really hard number to grasp. So in order to grasp that concept, I want to let you know that 1 part per trillion is like 1 second of time in over 317 centuries. Tiny, tiny amounts. So when you hear industry telling you, oh, it's just very small amounts, that should not make you feel comfortable because very small amounts can kill you. In March of 2023, EPA proposed drinking water standards. The MCL stands for maximum contaminant level for 6 PFAS, PFOA and PFOS, the 2 legacy ones that we know the most about. Then something called Gen X, which is a substitute for PFOA, which is supposed to be safer. It may actually be more dangerous. We don't know yet. And then 3 other ones. They also said in their proposal that PFOA and PFOS are likely to cause cancer, and there is no dose below which either chemical is considered safe. No dose. So even though they've set the proposed limits in drinking water at 4 parts per trillion, their max MCLG, which is their maximum contaminant level goal, is 0. They want there to be none of this in our water because it's that dangerous. Next slide. Oh, thank you. Oh, no. Thank you. So the assumption behind EPA's proposed regulation is that our exposure is 20% from drinking water, which means that 80% is coming from something other than drinking water. It's coming from the food you eat, like fish, meat, milk, baked goods, whatever, vegetables. But it's also coming from inhalation and dermal absorption. Next slide. This slide, again, hard to read from up here, but the point I want to get across is that because they're forever chemicals, because you can't destroy them, EPA literally had a contest and they said, we will pay someone $50,000 if you can figure out how to destroy this stuff. People don't know how to destroy it. That's part of the problem. So it just cycles through the environment. If you incinerate it, it goes up into the air, can travel as far as 150 kilometers, or it can just land right there, contaminate your water and your soil. If you put it in a wastewater treatment plant, it actually can create more PFAS. Studies show wastewater treatment plants were not designed to break down PFAS. And actually what we're finding is that there's more PFAS in the effluent of a wastewater treatment plant than the influent. In other words, the stuff going in to be cleaned has less PFAS than the stuff coming out of the pipe at the end. Why? Because PFAS chemistry is really, really complicated. I am not a chemist. I'm a PhD ecologist, but I know enough chemistry of PFAS to be scared. I'm also an environmental lawyer. But what happens is these things recombine during the treatment process and actually create more PFAS. So we can't burn them, we can't landfill them, and we can't put them in wastewater treatment plants. We just can't destroy them. They just cycle through the environment continuously. Next slide, please. We have learned over the past few years that there are massive amounts of PFAS in biosolids. The lower half of that graph are biosolid-based fertilizers. You can go to Lowe's or Home Depot, the garden section, and you can buy a bag of biosolids. They sell it. EPA calls it beneficial reuse. It is a good fertilizer, but we are finding tens of thousands of parts per trillion of PFOA, PFOS, and all of these other PFAS in every single biosolids that we test. And remember, EPA said there's no safe level of these. Next slide. So what does Aries say? I took these words right from their website. And I want you to pay attention to the words that I have in red. And it's very cagey language. I was going to say Weasley. My husband said I should not say Weasley, but honestly, it's Weasley language. The operating temperatures should give time for thermal decomposition of most PFAS compounds. Remember, no safe level. Does the should and the most make you feel comfortable? Because it shouldn't. They say the thermal oxidizer at 1800 degrees Fahrenheit gives another opportunity for these compounds to be decomposed, to be destroyed to some degree. To some degree. That does not mean 100%. They said appreciable or complete reductions of PFAS contamination compared to the incoming biosolids. Well, if you've got 30,000 parts per trillion in the sludge coming in, what's an appreciable destruction? Are we ending up with 1,000 parts per trillion? Whatever it is, it's too much. And then they say it is expected that the gasifier will be effective at thermally cracking most, but not all PFAS chemicals. These are all huge red flags. So when Aries says to you, we're destroying PFAS, this is what they're really saying. They're not destroying it all. Next slide, please. This was also from their website. Again, hard to see, but you can see at the bottom, I think it says 1.507. That's parts per billion. That's what's left after they burn it. So we have to move the decimal place over three times. So that's 1,507 parts per trillion that's left. That is not destroying PFAS. It's reducing it, but it's not destroying it. Next slide, please. So their conclusion is because of the lack of gas analysis in their testing. In other words, they did not test the emissions coming out of the stack. They tested the final product, but they did not test the emissions coming out of the stack. Because of the lack of gas analysis in this testing, it remains possible that some of the PFAS was volatilized but not decomposed. That means it went up into the air and it's going to be polluting your community. Then they go on to say further testing and gas analysis will be needed to confirm the decomposition of PFAS. You are going to be guinea pigs. Full stop. Next slide, please. What do other scientists say? There have been a lot of recent research. All of these quotes are from papers that came out between 2021 and 2023. So very recent research. They're saying additional research is needed on the fate and transformation products of PFAS in the residuals, oils, and gases from thermal treatment technologies. Additional research is warranted to understand all potential PFAS transformation emission routes and optimal air pollution emission control strategies for this technology. This last bullet is the one that scares me the most. Tetrafluoromethane, CF4 is the chemical structure. That is a PFAS. It has the highest degradation temperature of approximately 2,192 to 2,550 degrees Fahrenheit. They are not getting that high. They said, I think 1,800 is the highest they'll get for some small periods of time. Look how far that is, 1,800 to 2,552. Scientists are saying, given this, it has been suggested that CF4 should be used as a surrogate for all potential contamination. In other words, if CF4 is not being destroyed, we can't assume that other ones are being destroyed. Some people think that's a little bit conservative. I think if we're talking about human health, it is not conservative and it's necessary. Next slide, please. Oh, go back one, please. This is just a continuation. Thermal technologies are energy intensive and have the potential to create harmful byproducts, including fluorinated products of incomplete combustion. That means smaller chain PFAS, smaller number of carbon, but they're still PFAS and they're still going to be there. Further development of analytical methods capable of identifying and quantifying thermal PFAS decomposition and recombination is urgently needed. Now, remember when I said there were 14,000 PFAS? We can only test for about 70 of them. So when Aries is saying we destroyed PFAS, they're saying we destroyed some of the 70 PFAS that we can talk about, we can test for. They aren't testing for the rest of them. So we cannot say that they have been destroyed. Next slide, please. So in conclusion, this is one of my favorite sayings, and you should remember it and shout it back at everyone who's giving you a talk about how safe this stuff is. The absence of evidence does not mean the evidence of absence. In other words, just because we don't have the data doesn't mean it's safe. We don't have the data because there are so many PFAS out there that we can't test for. If we can't test for them, we don't know their toxicity, right? And the reason we don't know what these PFAS are is because companies are saying that they're confidential business information, or CBI. We're not allowed to know. In fact, one PFAS manufacturer, Solvay, actually sued a lab in Canada because they were reverse engineered some PFAS and figured out a formula. They got sued for figuring out the chemical formula of a chemical that's dangerous. We can only test for 70. Some PFAS are not destroyed at approximately 2550 degrees F, and we don't know what the PFAS emissions will be. On the next slide, I just have all of the references, which I can email to anyone where I got those quotes from, but that's all I have. I'm happy to answer any questions, but I think we have one more speaker first. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Kyla. And I would like to introduce our last speaker, Amber Schmidt from Clean Water Action.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for coming tonight. So I'm going to talk a little bit about what we can all do here sitting in this room, what we can all tell our friends, our neighbors, our family to do to stop this plant. I think most everyone here, after hearing that, is going to be adamantly against this facility being sited here in Taunton. I will say that that Clean Water Action was successful in stopping an Aries Gasification Plant in New Jersey, in Newark, New Jersey, in an environmental justice community. It took lots of work. It took coalition building. It took demonstrations. It took getting the media involved. It took taking our elected allies, making sure that voices were heard. And we're doing the same thing here. We've demonstrated outside of Aries Educational Forum. We've gone door to door to educate residents on this issue. We've talked to folks over the phone. We're working with our allies in the city council and on the state legislature. And we're holding forums like these, and we're going to continue to do so. That is what we need to be able to go up against Aries and stop them. But it is possible. If the work that we did in New Jersey shows anything, it shows that the community does have power when we come together and go up against these corporations, especially when we can lobby our elected officials like the city council that can shoot this proposal down tomorrow if they needed to. I will say that Aries was successful in building another plant in New Jersey, in Linden, New Jersey. And a lot of the progress of the facility siting here has been hung up on getting data from that facility. That facility was meant to go live, I believe, 2 years ago, a year and a half ago. We have not seen any data coming from that facility. That facility is not live. It cannot go live because their technology does not work the way they say it does. That's scary. Massachusetts EPA has been waiting on that data. We've been waiting on that data. We should not need to wait anymore. How many years will we have to sit here while they try to fix a broken plant in Linden, New Jersey, to then build another broken plant here? And they're going to say a lot of things about how much money they're going to bring the city. But you know, Barry Sanders, and he's here today, and he'll tell you it needs to be people over profit, right? And I think that's a great way to think of this, right? The city may get some money, but what is that going to cost taxpayers when your water becomes contaminated with PFAS higher than the level that's acceptable, and your city now needs to do remediation of that water? What is the cost for you, your family, or your friends who get sick from this and have to spend money going to hospitals, getting tested and getting treated? Is the money that Aries says they're going to bring here the best option? Is this technology the best option for Taunton to be able to get rid of its waste? And it's not. And there are other options. There is anaerobic digestion options. There are other more safe technologies that we believe need to be viable options and need to be looked at. So, you know, I'm going to open up for questions. I just want to say that the few things that you can do is absolutely follow and like Clean Air Taunton on Facebook. Make sure you're contacting your city councilors. We just had an election. Most incumbents won, one seat changed. It's still important for everyone to hear from their constituents that they do not want this facility sited. And also, you'll also hear from Senator Pacheco, who has legislation on the state level to stop these facilities before we actually have some standardization. I'm sure he's going to talk a little bit about that, but making testimony, writing in on those types of bills is going to make a difference. If we continue to stay vigilant, we've been fighting this facility for about 3 years now, and it is not built. It is not past the threshold here. That is good news. It means that they don't have the proof that this is going to work, and that our efforts are making a difference in educating the community, in lobbying our elected officials, and making sure that we will win eventually, and we will protect Taunton residents from this facility and toxic PFAS chemicals. Thank you. Great. So I think at this time we'll take a few questions if anyone has them, and then we're going to open it up to some elected officials to speak on this. And I've got a statement that I'll read after this from Councilwoman Borges.
Okay, so I have a question. This is going to sound kind of naive, and but I'm trying to think about some of the conversations I had. So this is not my voice saying this, but I can guarantee somebody would say to me, "It's everywhere. It's in everything. It's in my house. Why is this worse to have it?" So I want to get
Sure. And since we are recording, I'm just going to kind of repeat back that question, which is, if PFAS is so prevalent in the consumer products that we use in our household products, what is the difference between having PFAS coming from this facility? Absolutely.
I hear that all the time, constantly. We hear it from everybody, even regulators. And here's the answer. When I found out I was sick, I made an effort to reduce my PFAS risk. I got rid of everything in my house that I thought contained PFAS. I had my blood tested this past June, and I have some of the lowest PFAS levels in the nation because of my efforts. That is my choice. You can choose to go to the store and buy a nonstick pan that has PFAS in it right now. I wouldn't do it. You can do that. If Aries opens up and this PFAS is coming out of the stack, that choice is no longer yours. It is being imposed on you. That's one answer. The other answer is There are efforts underway in many states, including Massachusetts, to ban PFAS in products. So I liken PFAS contamination to climate change. If we stopped burning fossil fuels tomorrow, the levels of carbon dioxide in our atmosphere is going to stay at about 420 parts per million for decades, if not hundreds of years before it comes down. Same thing with PFAS. If we stop putting it in products and stop emitting it, it's going to take a while, but it will eventually come down. The more we use, remember it's bioaccumulative and it also biomagnifies throughout the food chain. The more we use, the worse it's going to get. So you have a certain load. Almost everybody in the world has PFAS in their blood right now. But the more you use, the higher that level goes and the higher your risk for those health impacts. If you're going to be breathing this stuff, it is going to increase your load. You can minimize it yourself. This is a choice that's being foisted on you that shouldn't be. I hope that helps.
I have a question for you as well. Thank you for your talk. If everyone decided, all right, that's it for nonstick cookware, I'm gonna throw it out. What do we do with it?
It's hazardous waste. It's a great question. We don't know. We don't have the answer. Same thing with all the sewage sludge. We don't have an answer of what to do with it. Some scientists are proposing that they get put in some kind of like Yucca Mountain situation, like nuclear waste, until we can figure out how to destroy it. Or put it someplace with very little rain until it naturally degrades over decades, hundreds of years, thousands of years. We don't have the answer, but it is, I mean, we have, in my town, I live in Easton, not too far from here. We had to spend $10 million to put in a water filtration plant. The filters that we use in our house until our plant, it's still not online. It's been 3 years now, still not on, so I can't drink my water. But we have a filter in our kitchen. Those filters that we change every 6 months, they're hazardous waste. We can't just throw them out. Same thing with Teflon pans. You should not just put them in the garbage. They are hazardous waste and nobody knows what to do with them. There is no good answer, unfortunately. But you can get rid of them yourself and stop using them.
I've heard if you put, like, if you vacuum, you use like a HEPA filter. That would help take out the PFAS from the rugs. However, same thing now, what do you do with the HEPA filter when you want to discard it?
Right. So I got rid of all the carpets in my house. I don't have any carpets. I don't have upholstered furniture that's treated with PFAS. Home Depot and Lowe's no longer sell carpets with PFAS. IKEA doesn't have any PFAS in their furniture. Companies are starting to do this. My rain jacket no longer has PFAS. I got one from Jack Wolfskin. You can find alternatives. It's not easy, but you can. But again, these are all personal choices. The other thing is that women tend to have less of a PFAS load than men because of their menstrual period. A lot of it comes out in blood every month if you're prior to menopause. Also, if you eat organic vegetables, because believe it or not, biosolids are allowed to be used on conventional farms for fertilizer, and it gets taken up by those plants, by those fruits and vegetables. There are farms in Maine, New Mexico, Michigan that have had to shut down because of the contamination of the meat and the milk and the cows. So there are ways to minimize your own risk and to get it out of your body, eating a lot of organic green leafy vegetables. And I know that sounds like a really privileged thing to say, but you can buy cheap organic vegetables at Walmart, at Target, at Aldi's, at Trader Joe's. I know it's traditionally more expensive, but it's your health. And you can find them just as cheap as conventional things. So yes, you're right. You can vacuum with a HEPA filter, but then the filter itself is probably filled with PFAS dust if you have treated carpets.
So I see that those really high temperatures that they want, are proposing that supposedly, kill the PFAS. So obviously you have to burn things to create high temperatures. So I haven't heard anything about what's going to be used to make that heat, whether it's going to be burning like oil, natural gas, something like that. Is that something that we should be concerned about as well? I mean, obviously the PFAS are very, very, very dangerous, but also that coming into the air as well, being from the burning of fossil fuels.
The claim is, that's a very good question. The claim is that fuel would only be needed to start up the process, and then the gasification itself would create as a byproduct fuel that would then power the facility. So Aries is claiming that the energy needed to power their facility is limited in scope. But you're absolutely right to worry about the greenhouse gas emissions associated with a facility like this. And that is why any so-called advanced recycling or chemical recycling process, and there's a whole lot of technologies that fall under that category. And biosolids is not the only waste product that is being proposed to be treated in this way. Plastic waste is another thing that industry is claiming can be converted into something else through these advanced recycling technologies. But anytime you hear about a technology like that, you should be worried about the climate impact. And so that is an absolutely important question to be asking.
Yeah, that happening. He's done.
The biosolids do have an odor. It's an awful odor. The finished product is not supposed to be smelly. But the raw stuff coming in is very smelly. But the problem is that because it's so difficult to destroy these PFAS, potentially a lot of them are just going up through that 127, is that what you said, 127 feet stack and going out across the town, which will be inhaled or will land in your soil. Now, Taunton doesn't get its water locally. You get your drinking water from Lakeville, I think. Right?
Absolutely.
So it may not impact your drinking water, but it will impact your soil. It will impact the air you breathe. It will impact the wetlands and the streams and the lakes and whatever waters you have around, and your groundwater.
Questions? Okay. Thank you both. I'm gonna now take some time to just read a statement from Councilwoman Estelle Borges, who was unable to make it today. I'm gonna do this, hopefully. Microphone here. So good evening. Unfortunately, I'm unable to attend tonight to address the matter of utmost importance, the proposed gasification plant proposed in Taunton. I urge each and every one of you to join us in fighting back against this project as it poses significant risks to our safety, health, and environment. First and foremost, we must acknowledge the lack of evidence provided by Aries, the company behind this proposal. They have failed to prove the safety of their operations, leaving us in the dark about potential risks. We cannot allow such a project to proceed. One of the most alarming concerns is the potential presence of PFAS and other forever chemicals in this proposed plant. These substances have been linked to adverse health effects and can persist in the environment for extended periods. We must demand that the city of Taunton and its leaders take full responsibility for addressing potential risks. Our health and well-being should never be compromised for the sake of profit. Please reach out to the mayor's office and the city councilors and say no. Taunton does not want this. We must consider the environmental impact of this gasification plant. Gasification processes can release pollutants and greenhouse gases, contributing to air and water pollution. We cannot turn a blind eye to the potential consequences this may have on our environment, which we are entrusted to protect for future generations. It is our duty to explore alternative, cleaner energy sources that have a lower environmental impact. But let us not forget the most crucial aspect of this fight, our community's health and well-being. Gasification plants have been known to emit pollutants that can have detrimental effects on air quality, leading to respiratory issues and other health problems. We cannot allow our community to bear the burden of such risks. Our health and safety should always take precedence over economic interests. In conclusion, I implore each and every one of you to join me in opposing the proposed gasification plant in Taunton. The Solid Waste Committee will receive an update from the CFO on December 5th, 2023, and I invite you to attend this meeting as well. We must stand united in demanding that Aries provide concrete evidence of safety, address the potential presence of PFAS and forever chemicals, and consider alternative, cleaner energy solutions. Let us protect our community, our health, and our environment. Together, we can make a difference. Sincerely, Councilwoman Estelle Borges. At this time, we are going to allow the other elected officials to come on up to talk a little bit about their opposition to this plant as well.
Thank you very much. Let me just begin by thanking Clean Water Action, Conservation Law Foundation, and the citizens organization, public employees that are working on this issue nationally. It is indeed an extremely important issue from a public health perspective. One of the things that was mentioned with the remarks that we heard is that most of the information that was shown to us in the slides actually came from Aries' own proposal. So it's important, and I think you can still get it online. You go to the city's webpage and look back a few months, you'll be able to see one of the slides that actually shows the stack. And it states that, yes, they will have a small amount of PFAS that would be emitted. It's right in their own proposal that they're going to emit PFAS from the stack of the proposed plant. I am very proud of what Clean Air Taunton has done since its inception. They've gone out and reached out to the leading environmental agencies. These agencies that have state offices that are the best nationally on protecting our environment and our health. So I want to say thank you to all of you for the diligent work that you continue to do on behalf of protecting the public health here in the city of Taunton. I also want to thank the local elected officials that maybe not at the very beginning, but through this process have learned what we've learned tonight and have come on board to be against this project because they want to protect the public health of their constituents. And I look out here tonight and I see Phil Duart sitting right in front of me, was out front on this issue from the very beginning. I see Barry Sanders here, taking a very strong position on this. I see Councilor McCall, who is with us and has understood where we are now on this issue. And you all heard Estelle Borges's, comments. We're up to 4 votes there. And there are at least 2 others that are not here tonight, but have publicly said that they are opposed to the facility. So that's 6 votes, not 5. In January. 6 votes in January for a vote that would be against this proposal if everybody continues to do and say what they have said throughout the electoral process. And it's up to all of us to make sure that that does happen. The people that I mentioned, that are here tonight, and the ones that are not, they have integrity. They thought long and hard before they made their public statements on this issue. I've spoken to each and every one of them, and they understand the complexity of what's going on here and what's in the balance. And that's our collective public health. Now, I'm going to say something I haven't told too many people. And tomorrow, I will find out with the 5th year of testing whether or not I am what one would call a cancer survivor or not. Because earlier this month, I went in and had my 5th MRI to check on my kidneys because I had a small cancerous tumor on my left kidney that I found out about 5 years ago. And because of the wonderful medical services that we have here in the Commonwealth and the tremendous medical care that we have in metropolitan Boston, I went in to have an ablation where they go in through your back and they heat it up and froze the blood flow to that tumor. And so far, I've been a very, very, very lucky person. It was found early enough, and hopefully tomorrow, at this time, I'll be smiling away. But still, always thinking about the consequences that could still remain in my body and where it may show up next. That's what we're talking about here. That's one of the reasons why I'm so passionate about this issue. People's lives are in the balance here. And we can stop something bad from happening. The New Jersey plant that you heard, that's not up and running. I mean, think about it. For 2 years, they've been trying to get data and they can't even get the plant working correctly. Do we really want to be the guinea pigs for that technology going forward? When there are other things that the leading scientists have looked at and have shown us that we can do anaerobic digestion. It's not the perfect alternative, but it will save the city some money in terms of shipping out biosolids to other places, paying a very high tipping fee to do so. And that's what's driving all of this, by the way, right? Is the amount of money the city has to pay to ship out the biosolids. And so obviously, if you're paying a lot of money and somebody's coming along and telling you Well, we got a way for you to save some money. Well, you want to listen, right? And so the city listened. But they haven't listened to all the technological alternatives and how we could work regionally with other municipalities to cite a type of entity that would be able to store the PFAS waste from the biosolids that are left after an anaerobic digestion technology conclusion in landfill, in a safe and lined landfill, these remaining parts of the anaerobic digestion policies, and in some cases, using other anaerobic digestion technologies, if you can house them in similar places. For example, those of you that are aware of where the Stop and Shop facility is in Freetown, Massachusetts. Freetown actually has an anaerobic digestion facility for Stop and Shop. All the old food waste at Stop and Shop gets shipped over to the anaerobic digestion facility, where they use the food waste to actually develop power to help run some of the facilities that they're connected to. Hospitals, schools, other places in our society that could actually operate off of anaerobic digestion technology in the very hard to decarbonize sectors of our society, like shipping and some airline back fuel systems, and the very hard to decarbonize major trucking. There are opportunities to use anaerobic digestion technology to utilize the fuel sources and put it in there that actually decrease methane gas, which is really, really dangerous, and the other greenhouse gases, to actually have ourselves embrace a much better, cleaner energy future for all of us. So I want to conclude by just telling you about a bill that is before us at the state level. And you heard the lack of evidence. We don't have the evidence. It's been far too long now. We've waited almost a little over about 2 years for the evidence to arrive. No evidence has arrived. Only promises that are out there. I can tell you, I'm going to be speaking in Raleigh, North Carolina on December 9th at a national meeting as chair of the Council of State Governments national organization on PFAS. Yes. Legislatures from throughout the country have picked this as one of the top issues that we need to deal with. And we're going to be listening to the EPA, which will be presenting to us what they're doing right now relative to their public rulemaking and the rules that are out now for comment. And we're going to be looking at that. And by the way, I think the water number, and you guys would know better than I, but the water number, I think, is somewhere around 4 parts per trillion. 4 parts per trillion. As was stated, they don't have a number to even suggest for air quality standards. So the bill that I proposed, along with Carol, who had to leave, Carol Doherty, and the other members of the legislative delegation from the region, seeks to stop any procurement by municipalities of facilities that would generate PFAS waste emissions until and unless a standard for safe public health has been promulgated, regulated, and adopted by EPA and DEP. Both. Has to be adopted by both. That's what the law says. Until we can have a regulated standard that says it's safe at a particular level, whatever the level happens to be, then you can't procure these services if the services will emit harmful, toxic chemicals that go into the air that can impact somebody with kidney cancer or testicular cancer, or, you know, impact somebody's baby that is on the way, or impact a pregnant woman. I mean, there's just, I mean, the list goes on and on and on in terms of what we know we have evidence for. We have evidence for the bad things that take place to people. We have that evidence in terms of not protecting our public health. That should be enough for us to act and wait for the right technology to come forward. There are other technologies we can use. We can do composting. There's a whole range of things that we could do to make things better than what it is today. And there's a lot of testing that's going on with technology to get rid of PFAS. And when a company actually does that, and I hope someday that will happen. This is not it, by the way. So when it actually does happen, you'll have these same organizations standing up applauding the outcome of that, and it will be in the national headlines. It won't just be in the national headlines, it'll be in the international headlines. The company won't have to worry about marketing itself because everybody will want the technology. It's not here, it's not now, and hopefully with the right number of votes on the city council, it won't happen here ever. So the bill is before the Committee on State Administration and Regulatory Oversight. I have a commitment from the two chairmen. We had it reported out favorably in the last session. It's going to be reported out favorably in this session, but then we need to get it over the goal line. And that's where I need everybody's help. The Senate Chair of Ways and Means is right in Fall River, Massachusetts. There's a few people in this room that have connections to Fall River, New Bedford, because of the work that you have done on the project in New Bedford that you helped, you know, kill for now. And we're going to need to get the calls going and the letters going as soon as that bill gets reported to Ways and Means, so that we can get it on the floor of the Senate. I believe if we get it on the floor of the Senate, we'll have the overwhelming majority of votes, even though industry has written in to legislators saying how dangerous this bill would be if it were to pass. How dangerous this bill would be if it were to pass. A bill that simply says, until EPA and DEP actually promulgate and put into place public health standards, you shall not procure these types of technologies. What's so dangerous about that? It's just saying, we're not even saying no forever. We're saying, wait until we know it's safe. That's what the bill says. So I would ask you for your help and support on that initiative. And I just want to conclude by saying again, thank you to Clean Air Taunton. I was on their Zoom call last night, and I see the same faces all the time. And they need community help as well. So any members that are here for the first time, or maybe a few times, but you haven't really got involved with the group, I'd ask you to do so. Because you can make a difference. And maybe just save a life or two along the way. Maybe that life might be your own. So please get involved and try to make a difference. And make sure you continue to talk to the counselors that had the courage early on to stand up on this issue. And those that have come along and understood what the complexities of this were and what it means to public health at the end of the day. And I hope we get the research done and the proper motions that need to be made so that they'll be able to be upheld constitutionally as we go forward. So I thank you again for your leadership, and let me know what I can be doing in the future to continue to work on this issue, because we need to win it, and we need to make sure that this in particular doesn't happen. And the second piece of legislation that's up there is there's an omnibus PFAS bill that's being looked at as well. And so we're looking at getting PFAS out of the upstream part of our system. And we're trying to do that as well. I believe we will pass a bill on PFAS this session. That means after January through July, I believe that will take place. There was a commission that was formed, and we were involved with that. And I'm glad that we have some good recommendations. So much so that Maine, New York, New Jersey, the mayor of Newark was one of the people that eventually came out and, helped kill the proposal there. Stick together and we'll eventually help to change things for the better. Thank you very much.
Every day, helping us along as well. Thank you to everybody else, especially all of our speakers. It was awesome. I learned so much more this time about you guys that I didn't know, and about what Aries really had going for it. So I want to thank everyone.
Does any other elected officials wishes to get this done?
Good evening. For those of you that do not know me, my name is Philip Duarte. I am a member of the Taunton City Council. I was one of the first city councilors to be opposed to this. And I will start by saying that when Aries first brought this proposal, they did a good job of greenwashing it. And the first vote that they got from the city council was unanimous to move forward with an option to lease the landfill site. So if it wasn't for the work of Conservation Law Foundation to bring these concerns to our attention initially, we could be in a very different place at this moment. So thank you to you and Kirsty and your team for the work that you did on that. So the first vote was an option to lease. The second vote was a host community benefits agreement. That one passed 7-2. And then the third and final step was supposed to be the actual lease of the landfill site, which has not happened to this date. It will not happen unless any movement is made at the state level, in the NEPA office and through the DEP permitting process. During that time, it was discovered that there was a complete disregard for the proper procurement procedures for this type of process, which we now know has essentially invalidated all of those previous approvals. So going forward, what we have to look out for is an attempt to now roll all three of those steps into one vote, one approval. And from what I know, the intention is to make all of that contingent on it being proven safe. But if there's anything I know from being a city councilor for 4 years, it's that once you vote on something, you don't have the ability to take back that vote. So I'm hopeful that my colleagues will understand that nothing should be voted on, period, until some determination is made at a minimum. But we know from the information presented here and at the previous forums that this is obviously not safe. One of the things, so my background is in public health, so this is all right up my alley. And so one of the scientific things that I want to underscore, and it kind of goes to Steve's question earlier about, if there's all this PFAS already all around us, then why does this matter? And I love the response about, this taking away our choice of being present with that PFAS. But another component of the answer to that question is that this is a regional facility. It was in one of the very first slides pointing out that this is going to bring in hundreds of tons of sewage sludge. The sewage sludge coming out of the Taunton wastewater treatment plant, I believe off the top of my head is around 20 tons, 20 to 40. So over 90% of the sewage sludge that would be going to this facility is not from Taunton. So that means all of the PFAS, the air emissions, all of the bad things associated with it, 90+% of it wasn't even from Taunton and would not have been our problem to deal with in the first place. So the fact that we are inviting all of this sludge into our community is just disturbing. So that in and of itself should just stop the project right at the door. We obviously, as a city, have an obligation to figure out what to do with our own sewage sludge, but it certainly should not be our unilateral problem to solve the issue for the region. The senator talked about working on the issue and solving it regionally, but that would be a collaborative approach where everyone's involved, not just us saying, yeah, we'll just take everyone's sludge and bear the burden ourselves. So that is the most disturbing part of it to me. Those numbers have been consistent in every iteration of their slideshow that they've given, that this is going to be, I think it's over 400 tons of sewage sludge going into this facility. I think the last point I'll make, one of the proudest accomplishments for myself last term was working with our city administration and staff when Aries filed their draft environmental impact report with the state. We had commissioned an independent study of that report to be done by a company called Tetra Tech, which is an engineering firm that specializes in air quality issues. So that report was about 30 pages. It identified a lot of the issues that we've covered here, really poked some holes, I guess you could say, in the things that they included about air quality and air emissions. It made it very clear that it makes no sense for the state of Massachusetts to permit this without any data from New Jersey. And it really, consolidated all of this into one concise report. And what a lot of people don't know about the NEPA process that I think Clean Air Taunton and partner organizations conveyed is that when Aries responds to the draft environmental impact report, they have to respond to every single piece of public input that was provided. And so for that step in the process is why the public input is so important. Whether it's a 30-page report from, expert environmental air quality engineers, or letters from people in the community that live around there, and it is an environmental justice community, saying that, why should they have to bear the burden of this facility when they're already facing God knows what effects of being located next to a landfill for 50, 75 more years. All of that has to be responded to. So that is why it's important that everyone continues to be engaged with Clean Air Taunton throughout the process, because the public input does matter. And I think very early on, we talked to folks in New Bedford who were fighting parallel products, and they made it very clear that when it comes to stopping projects like this, whether it's sewage sludge, compressor stations, all of these awful facilities, it usually becomes a war of attrition, where it gets caught up in state bureaucracy. They don't want to touch it. They're trying to advocate for it to go through anyways. But at some point, these are for-profit corporations. So at some point, it's just not worth it for them to continue. They'll just pack up and try to go somewhere else. So by doing these reports, by giving public input, it's just adding more obstacles in their way. And hopefully it will all culminate in this being voted down by the city council. I am very hopeful, but definitely, keeping them at bay for as long as possible. So I would thank Clean Air Taunton and Conservation Law Foundation. Ms. Bennett, I think your information was excellent. I agree with Nancy, that's even more information about PFAS that I thought I knew a lot, but now I know even more. And I will thank you all for coming, and like I said, I encourage you to be as involved through this process as possible as we go forward. Thank you.
Hello, everyone. I'm Barry Sanders, also one of your city councilors, and I'll start by saying, I love following Senator Pacheco and Councilor Duarte, because then I get to say all that smart stuff that they just said. Yeah, what they said. That's me. It's interesting. I was thinking about Senator Pacheco had said, the standard of 4 parts per trillion. And I thought, like, how much is a trillion? A trillion grains of rice is 17 tons of rice. So if something can have an impact at 4 parts per trillion, that's like 4 bad grains of rice in 17 tons of rice that would make all of that rice no longer edible. It just seems like a very, very small amount. That would tell me that this is some pretty dangerous stuff. So, in some of the brief time that I've been able to contribute to some of what Clean Air Taunton has been doing, we did try to kind of crunch the numbers a bit. And I got to this place where I thought, okay, let's assume that absolutely everything that they're saying is true in terms of the revenue that Taunton could see from this gasification plant, this sludge plant. So what? It's, as you said earlier, it's people over profit. How much money is enough to spread something as dangerous as PFAS all over the community? And quite honestly, this room should be packed not just by people from Taunton, but people from Lakeville, people from Rainham, people from Rehoboth and Dayton and Freetown and Middleborough, because one of the things that Aries said, as if this was a good thing, that anything that comes up out of that steam stack, they're gonna shoot that way up in the sky, so that by design it spreads over a large area. Because we wouldn't want to burden the people who live right next to the plant with the full effect of whatever is coming out of that steam stack. So that you don't live on East Britannia Street, that you don't live in Taunton, don't think that the water comes from Lakeville. That doesn't make any of this any safer. The water in Lakeville is just going to be as impacted. The people in Lakeville and Middleborough and Rainham, and at this point, I would say Carver and Marion and essentially Senator Pacheco's entire district will be impacted, because that's what they told us that they planned to do. Send this steam stack up as high as possible so that it would spread over a large enough area. I don't know what the point would be to that. So we've got that going on. The other quote, one of my quotes today is people over profit. The other quote I want to leave you with is, and I use this all the time, and I wish I knew who said it because it wasn't me first. Never be the first one on or the last one off. I don't care what the plan is, what the project. If Aries goes out and builds one of these plants in 5 other communities and proves that they have hit the nail on the head, that they have the golden ticket for ridding the world of the dangers of PFAS, yes, let's get on board. If they can prove that it's done it, I am not willing to let the residents of Taunton be the test subjects to find out whether or not they're able to do that. I'm not voting for that. That's not going to happen. And we've talked a bit about the evolution of how councilors are voting. And early on it was 2, and now potentially 3. But I got to tell you, I think we're there. I think it's going to be 9-0, and I'll tell you why. Because every one of my colleagues in their campaign interviews have consistently said, I will not vote for this until it is proven to be 100% safe. Well, last I checked, aspirin wasn't 100% safe. So we're in the clear, right? By their own words, every one of my colleagues on the council pledged that they would not vote for this unless it is proven to be 100% safe. So I think we can all go, we're all set now, because they said they would vote against it. So let's bring that up on Tuesday and get rid of it, because before everyone's memory starts to fade a bit and suddenly people start forgetting what they said during their campaigns. I'm not naive enough to think that that's actually how it's going to go. So I would say that we have to remain engaged with the work that Clean Air Taunton is doing. We have to continue to reach out to my colleagues on the council and the mayor's office to make sure that they don't forget that we haven't forgotten and that we're still paying attention. And absolutely, when this comes up in December, I personally will be disappointed if the room is not full. at council chambers, as I think it should be. And what I have seen pretty consistently is that a packed council chambers absolutely will influence the votes of my colleagues on the council. So I think because of the work that has been done by Clean Air Taunton and all of the partners, I think we're heading in a good direction. I'm very optimistic that we will keep Aries out of Taunton. But the work is not done yet. So please remain engaged. Continue to call and email my colleagues on the council and the mayor's office and let them know that we're not for this. And no other vote other than no would be acceptable until there's 5 other of these plants somewhere else proving that, you know, they've got it all figured out. So I thank you for your time. I thank everyone for coming in today. And of course, I thank Clean Air Taunton and all of the partners for this wonderful presentation and the ongoing work. Yes, ma'am. I think I heard Councilor Duarte say it was December the 5th. You didn't say it? Somebody said it.
It was in Estelle.
Estelle, in her presentation, said it was December the 5th. So yeah, let's stay tuned and make sure that that's the thing. Because you know, the thing about the city council agenda is that it doesn't always look on Friday the way you thought it was going to look on Tuesday. So just because we think something's going to appear on the agenda on December 5th doesn't mean that it'll actually be there. So let's stay tuned and keep our eyes peeled for that and see where that leads. So by all means, feel free. I'm sure I speak for Councilor Duarte and Councilor McCall. Feel free to reach out to us at any time with questions to let us know that you're interested, and we will keep you informed about what's going on. Thank you so much.
Councilman McCall, would you like to come up and say a few words?
I don't need a microphone. I think you can hear my voice, right? You'll hear me? Well, first of all, I'm really excited to see everyone out here this evening. Senator Pacheco, I'm glad that you're leading the charge in this state. You know, I think it's great that you're doing this. I'd like to see Councilor Duarte, Councilor Sanders, and myself, and Councilor Borges. All 4 of us are working hard to make sure this does not happen. I know we all talked about if it's not safe, we're not going to support it. And Barry, you're right. We all said that. And we all said that if it's not safe, we're not going to support it. So all I'm going to say is that I'm learning as I go along with all this information. There's a lot to absorb. And you can count on me to make sure that I'm going to make sure that we all work together to make sure this does not happen, because safety is really important in our community. And I strongly believe that. And we all believe that, don't we? And if we all, come on, guys. All right, if we all believe in that, and we mentioned about this meeting coming up, we should tell your neighbors, your friends, your relatives, make sure you fill that city hall up and say no to this project. If you believe in it, we need to stand together. The stronger we are standing together, we're going to be able to get this done. And if you agree with that, let's do it. You agree with that? Come on, guys. Can't be all sleeping here. Okay, we all believe it. So don't fall asleep on me here. Let's make sure that we work together with the safety of our community. And I'm 100% working with you all. Thank you.
You can close it. I'm just gonna wait until I can end the recording.
I want to thank you all for coming, and the meeting is over. Thank you.
Oh, yeah.